A good few years ago, around April 2009, I think, I'd just wrapped up my winter quarter at college. It was my first ever stint at college, and with spring break around the corner, I and my three buddies decided it was time to taste the great outdoors. You see, we lived in western Washington, and there this fascinating road hugs Bellingham Bay and Samish Bay, north of Puget Sound. We locals call it Chuckanut Drive. It's a thrilling road, edging along a cliff and overlooking the water. Along the way, there are places to stop and snap a picture, or do some touristy stuff. My friends and I drove up there, and stopped at one such spot, hoping to hike down to the water. We had packed some lunch and beer to kick back and soak up the day. The trail ended next to some train tracks, which were popular with transients and drifters. As we lounged on driftwood by the bay, we saw a number of them pass by. We minded our business, and so did they. Many were dressed oddly, wearing blankets and tarps, kind of a strange sight. After about an hour, we realized the place wasn't as exciting as we thought, so we decided to head out and find some new adventure. On our way out, we spotted a better-looking trail to climb back up, and decided to take it. That's when our day got interesting. We stumbled across what looked like a blanket wrapped around something. It was big, but not as big as a person. I remember my mind was racing, praying, "Please don't be a child. Don't be a child." As we approached, we were relieved to find it wasn't a child, but were deeply saddened to see it was a lifeless dog. Its head had been cleanly chopped off, a detail that still disturbs me. There was no blood, and the blanket was spotless, like it had just been removed from a closet. The dog's body was hidden away using cut branches and shrubs, about 10 to 15 feet away from the train tracks. It was clear that someone had ended this poor dog's life and ditched its body there quite recently. We looked at each other, panic setting in, and raced up the steeper trail back to the road. We hopped into my buddy's SUV and sped away as fast as we could. We did report this to the sheriff's office later, but they probably thought it was a stray dog hit by a train. We never heard anything back from them. I've never set foot on that stretch of road since then. A few seasons back, a young man named Noah Carr chose to go on a lonesome journey. This backpacking adventure lasted 5 days and covered over 60 miles. He expressed that he took along a handy Kodak disposable camera on this exciting expedition. Once back, he was bursting with anticipation to develop his photos promptly. He was thrilled to share glimpses of the mesmerizing wildlife and scenic beauty he had witnessed with his dearest ones. After patiently waiting for a handful of days, the much-awaited call from Costco, the hub where his precious memories were being unveiled, finally reached him. They alerted him that he was free to collect his bundle of joy. His enduring curiosity got the better of his patience, and he couldn't help but tear open the package the moment he stepped inside his vehicle. His heart brimmed with joy as he glanced through the beautiful shots that had come out splendidly, and then his eyes fell upon the final batch of pictures. A handful of photos, 10 to be exact, were unfamiliar to him. The subject of these pictures was none other than himself, asleep, nestled comfortably within his little tent. It dawned on him that he wasn't alone. An unexpected visitor had ventured into his tent. I was born and brought up in the UK, but my roots go back to Libya, where my parents were originally from. They moved to the UK back in the 70s, long before the current conflicts unfolded in their homeland. From time to time, we plan trips to visit our relatives who live in the capital city of Tripoli. Yet, ever since the fall of Gaddafi, the rival militias and their relentless conflicts have left the city in ruins. This led to our visits to Libya becoming fewer and fewer. However, a big family wedding was on the cards back in Tripoli last year. Naturally, we received an invitation, but returning to a virtual war-zone city was a scary thought. To my surprise, my parents bravely decided to attend the wedding. I had two options: stay back home worrying about their safety, or accompany them. I chose to go with them to keep an eye on them. Tripoli is an enthralling city with architectural marvels ranging from Roman ruins to Italian-style buildings from the time Libya was under Italian rule. Not to mention mouth-watering Libyan food. But you could still see the scars of the recent conflict. Bullet holes, shell craters, and large memorials of lives lost during the attacks, which were everywhere. Yet, amidst all this, the city felt safe for some reason. And when we were reunited with our extended family, all the worry and anxiety faded away. We enjoyed the family wedding and planned to stick around for a week, relishing the family time. Visiting Libya was a considerable part of my childhood, and I have a deep emotional connection with the country. I was just happy that we could enjoy our time there in peace. One evening, as we sat down to dinner with our family, I heard some loud noises outside. I wished those were just fireworks, but my cousin's reaction suggested otherwise. Something violent was stirring in Tripoli. We quickly packed up the food and sought refuge in the basement, which was a safe shelter with provisions for survival for a couple of days. What followed was the most frightful night of my life. Every boom of bombs above made sleep impossible. The fear of some armed militia bursting into our shelter was unbearable. Eventually, the noise simmered down a bit, and my uncle went up to find out what was going on. Evidently, a local militia group was under attack. This was no ordinary skirmish. The violence was very likely to resume. We had to get out of there. Our relatives arranged a minivan to drive us to Tunisia, where we could fly back home. Leaving our family behind in Tripoli, which was on the brink of another wave of violence, was heartbreaking. We tried to help them move to the UK, but they were too emotionally attached to their homeland to leave. Even though we managed to stay in touch, and thankfully they were safe, I was haunted by the fear of that night for months. I couldn't help but think that that dreadful night was just a fleeting moment for me, but for my relatives, it was their everyday reality. So, once upon a time, I was out exploring with my two buddies in the beautiful Shenandoah, Virginia, just last year. Our plan was to spend our day hiking. However, surprisingly, my one friend started to feel sick and decided to return early. To accompany him and ensure his safety, my second friend joined him. They asked me to continue, and since I was really excited about this hike, I did. As the sun began to set, I discovered a space in the woods. In the middle of that space was a strange sight. A big, elaborate dollhouse, about the size of a 3-year-old toddler. It looked fresh, as if it had just been built. You could still smell the spray paint that was used on it. I noticed a photo that was stuck to the back of the dollhouse. It looked like an old family picture, maybe from the 80s. Something was off though. Everyone in the picture seemed uneasy, as if they were forced to pose for it. Leaving behind this curious sight, I continued my journey, aiming to reach my campsite by nightfall. I reached my designated spot, but was a little jittery thinking about the dollhouse I'd found in the woods. I decided not to camp out in the open amidst the uncertainty of who might stumble upon me there. Thankfully, I had a compact, one-person tent. I pitched it partially hidden behind some bushes. I was lucky to find a spot shielded by a large heap of rocks from one side. It kept me shielded from the strong and chilly winds that had begun to blow down from the mountains. I found the rustling of the trees soothing and soon fell asleep. Suddenly, I was jolted awake by a loud noise. My heart was pounding as I lay in the dark, trying to figure out what had disturbed me. Somewhere far off, I heard a man's voice. It was loud and upset one moment and then quiet and calm. It was like he was having a conversation with himself. As he got nearer, I heard him ranting about someone, and then, out of the blue, he started talking about cheese and crackers. It was evident that something was not right with him. The man passed by my hiding spot, carrying something long under his arm. It seemed like a rolled-up tent. Even in the faint moonlight, I noticed he was tall and sturdy. As he moved away, his voice faded until it was completely silent again. The rest of my night was restless. As soon as I saw the first light of dawn, I packed up and dashed back the way I came. And weirdly enough, the dollhouse was gone when I crossed the clearing. A few years back, I had a solo hiking adventure across various trails on the Blue Ridge Parkway. Being a woman in her 20s, I know now it was a bit foolish to go alone. But I had a dream to explore Mount Mitchell, so off I went. The place wasn't buzzing with people because it was a Monday. The path to the top was paved and straightforward, although a bit steep. Being a smoker, I was winded by the time I reached the top. As I stood there, trying to regain my breath, I noticed a man stepping close. He must have been in his late 40s with slick, dark hair. He started a conversation, commenting on my hard breathing and asking if I was all right. I was surprised, but managed to assure him, making light of my situation as a smoker. Despite my efforts to politely dismiss him, he followed me to a podium, showing the directions and famous spots around. He started sharing personal stories, telling me about his recent divorce and how he's part of a traveling men's group. Soon he began sharing intimate details about his divorce, which made me uncomfortable. I tried to signal my discomfort, but he kept talking, barely letting me respond. I figured he was simply lonely and wanted someone to share his stories with, but then I noticed he was alone and hadn't seen any men's group around. Now, feeling somewhat alarmed, I told him I was heading back down to the gift shop. To my surprise, he began following me. Although I was tired, I felt no interest in exploring the smaller trails branching off from the main one. Still, the man, with his hair now looking greasier, suggested we take a walk on one of these trails. I declined firmly. Looking around, I noticed two elderly women on a bench observing us. One of them suggested it was time for me to leave. With a grateful smile, I nodded and walked briskly past the gift shop, going straight to my car. Thankfully, the man didn't follow. That was my last hike for the day. Nothing bad happened, but it taught me to reconsider solo adventures like that one. One summer before my 11th grade, I joined a sleepover camp. I was used to this since I was very young, but this year was special. Instead of staying in the camp, we were going on a hiking adventure on the Appalachian Trail for a fortnight. This was a thrilling prospect for me, being an adventurous soul. Our group consisted of me, 2 lady guides, and 9 girls. A few days into the trip, we got to know each other better. We were having lunch by a water fountain on the trail when we noticed a shady van driving around the same area multiple times. It gave us the creeps, but no one said anything. Then, the van halted near us, and a man rushed out, yelling if anyone knew CPR, as his half-brother was having seizures. Our guides ran towards the van. After they returned, we were uneasy. Something didn't feel right. We had noticed the van circling around, and the half-brother part seemed odd in an emergency situation. The man reappeared with strange-looking puppets, trying to engage us in conversation. When we ignored him, he finally left, leaving us in an awkward silence. We quickly packed and left the spot. This bizarre incident wasn't scary, but it started a series of odd happenings that day. As we continued hiking and reached our campsite, we shared the creepy encounter and other scary stories, killing time. Being a group of teenage girls, we got bored quickly. We explored the campsite, flirted with some boys, and decided to play a group game just as 3 new guys approached us. During the game, we shared personal stories. That's when these guys revealed that 2 of them were trans, and all 3 were planning to start a reality show. It was odd that they shared this information out of the blue. Things got weirder when they started laughing about one of their dads being in prison. To lighten the mood, we told them about the creepy puppet man from earlier, to which they responded that he was their uncle. When some girls went past their tent later that evening, they overheard these lads singing pop songs and having a tickle fight. The next morning, their tent was gone. All we found was a note saying, "We got rained on and peed our pants, and we will miss all of you, the great friendships we had. Heart, the creepy guys who get respect." I still wonder which was stranger, their uncalled-for revelations or the creepy puppet uncle connection. Did you also have any weird or creepy encounters during your outdoor adventures? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more spooky stories.